Let's call this meeting to order. My name is Reed Cools, and I'm the moderator for the evening. I have no position on the project. I'm simply here to facilitate a productive meeting. There are three elements to the meeting. The purpose of the meeting is basically to focus on is to provide feedback on the existing plan, as I understand it. Hope Hilton will give a background of the overall project. I think Ken Hemming will then discuss the current plan, and then we'll get into the feedback part where people ask questions, respond, make comments, etc. When you do that, please should, if you would state your name when you speak, and then you focus on the matter at hand and not any extraneous matters, and then we keep any personal views out of it. The object is to have a civil discussion about, is this plan good or not? Should the town proceed with it or not? Etc. So, all that said, Hope?
I agreed that I do some background. I agreed I do some background on how this project came, the proposal came to exist. I have to swallow the microphone. Okay. This property was acquired by the state of Maine in 1970 using bond money that required that it be held and used for conservation, management, habitat, and public access to the water. That was it was a time when the state was doing a bunch of acquisitions around the state with some bond money that it had specifically for this purpose. This particular parcel nothing happened with it. It didn't really go anywhere. They were working on other bigger, more complex projects. And since 1970, some of you may recall that the Department of Conservation, which held the Bureau of Public Lands in it, merged ultimately under the LePage administration with the Department of Agriculture, and now is the Department of Agriculture, Forestry, and Conservation. I'm so, having worked so long in this area, I always call it DOC, but that isn't its technical name anymore. So it had about 16 or 17 acres of land. There's a small piece across the road that came with as part of the sale, but that is not the focus of this discussion and proposal. At the time they acquired it, they did some survey work along the outer edges, and I don't know, that has not as yet been verified, although some people walking around the site may have found some of the pins. Around 2018, some of the IFW staff, that's Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, which has a very active program in water access, both on freshwater ponds and on ocean. They don't have as much ocean access frontage as they do on ponds, but they investigate and look for what might be a good site to put in. Sometimes it's as big as the Deer Point boat launch, which some of you may remember when that went through. And some of them are tiny little two-car parking space where you slip a canoe into a pond and take off and canoe for a while. It varies broadly by area of the state and whether it's a big enough pond that it should merit some kind of attention. So this staffer came across the Hartford property, and he walked the bounds and he went back and researched it and thought it would be a spectacular public access site. So it's sort of on his back burner and aware of it. I have done legal work for the state of Maine for many of the state agencies since the 80s. So I have done public access sites all over the state of Maine. And most of the time they're small, quiet little sites that don't attract much attention. Something like Deer Point is an exception to the rule and had quite a bit of attention. It's a very big site. It's very highly developed. That isn't what is being proposed here. So he mentioned this to me, and I said, oh, that's interesting, but I didn't do anything about it. I finally, trying to rethink years ago, maybe in 2022, I went over there and walked around on the site. And from a public perspective, and having worked on many of these projects, it had everything you want in a public access site. It was located on a public road. It was undeveloped with, I don't know how many feet of undeveloped shoreline. Its use was permanently restricted to conservation purposes and public access, excuse me. It was a very good site for a small, low-density proposal, which is what we're proposing. It was consistent with the town's comprehensive plan to encourage and acquire public access to the waters of Harpswell. So I mentioned this informally at a Townlands committee meeting that summer, and people were intrigued by it and said, well, send a memo, send a note to Christie to see if the select board would be interested in going forward with something like this. There are properties that we look at now and then. We don't always add all that into the minutes because we may not have talked to the property owner. We don't know if it's feasible. We don't want to put something in public record that then upsets a landowner who had no knowledge that this was occurring. So sometimes those discussions come up even before a meeting or at the end of a meeting, and that's what happened with this site. And so I did a brief memo to Christie saying, here's the site, here are the potentials for it. And she brought it before the select board. It would have been when Jane Covey was on the board, not Matt, who joined this year. So that's where the kernel of this idea started. And it was with informal discussions and based upon knowledge of how these things happen and our combined Lands Committee knowledge of Harpswell and what its needs are and what is feasible to develop for public use. All these things, when something is owned by the state of Maine, they can't dispose of it, other than under very, very rare conditions. So in this case, having done these things for the state of Maine, they will, if a town is interested in doing it, the town and the state will work together on a management plan for that site, and they'll do the research that one does to decide if it's feasible, if it's appropriate, and things of that nature. I think that's how these things work. Nothing gets, it's all fairly informal initially as you feel your way and think if it's going to work or not. I had talked informally to employees at the Department of Conservation. They said that would be great. They have some bond money still. They could pay for any of the development. It would be up to the town to manage it and take care of it. People at IF&W had the same reaction. So that's the basis on moving forward and looking into it. And the town then being, it was the select board saying, go ahead and develop some information on it, put together a plan on how we might do this. And then they would end up talking with the state about what's feasible, what's not, what can they do. Any of this, a management agreement, which is the form that the state agencies use if they're going to allow third parties to manage their land or portions of their land. IF&W does it, DOC does it. They're the two entities really who do this kind of work. It's a fairly short form. I know there was a draft that circulated. It was not the draft for this site. It was just, this is how some of these forms look like. They're not very long. They get reviewed periodically by both sides to see if they want to tweak it or do something different with it. The state may put restrictions on it depending on what they see at the site. Town may put restrictions on it. So that's how the whole project, not a project, sorry, the proposal normally, all the kind of things, some of the things that we were doing, you don't do until you really that the town staff sits down with the state staff and says, is this a deal that is feasible that we want to do? Once they've decided that, then they move ahead with their respective staff to develop it and decide what needs to be looked at and what needs to be done. Some of this happened kind of out of sequence because the questions came up where people were concerned about the site. And so some studies or initial work was done by the state, even though they said we don't really have to do this yet, but we did something. So that's the background of how we got to where we are here. And this is now sort of the informal starting point where everybody hears what's being proposed and what has been done so far and what we hope might be achieved by this group meeting, and to get some feedback from people who are here.
Hi, I'm Ken Emick. I'm co-chair of the Hartsville Town Lands Committee. I realize that most of the people in the audience are familiar with this piece of property, but I just want to take a quick minute to, is that better? Yeah. Take a quick minute to review exactly where this property is and what the proposal is. The property is, it's located off of Allen Point Road, and it goes to the water. It's on the eastern side of Allen Point Road and goes to the water on Clark Cove. It's approximately 18 acres. On the handout, it shows up on handouts as well as on the larger printouts that as you came in. That's been the proposal as Hope outlined. It's owned by the state. The select board has proposed that this will be a warrant article at the March town meeting, whether the town wants to enter in a management plan for this property. It's been through several public discussions on the sort of the draft of what a management plan might look like. And Katie, I don't know if you want to go ahead and switch more. Right, thank you. And this is a small version. This is also in the handout. But this is looking north. On your far left is Allen Point Road. And I think it's sort of cyan color would be where the parking lot would be. This would just simply be a few parallel parking places along Allen Point Road. Turquoise, okay, thanks. I think it shows it, yeah, that you should be able to see that the sort of magenta line that goes from Allen Point Road is the proposed trail down to the water frontage on Clark Cove. It would be approximately a quarter mile. A good bit of it would be going through the field that exists now. The most sort of improvements, so to speak, that would need to be made would be more or less clearing the brush through the wooded section. And then it would follow sort of the tree line down to some existing steps down to the water. This is a revision from the last proposal that included what you see here, plus the earlier proposal included a trail sort of above the water level down to the eastern end of the property. That's been removed for basic feedback, wanting to minimize chance of visitors straying into the neighbor's property. That's the trail. The other sort of main part of the sort of work that would be under master plan would be the signage. At the start of the trail along Allen Point Road, there would be a sign more or less delineating this is the property, listing the rules, and showing basically a simple map showing what the trail is and how to get to Clark Cove. Along the borders, especially on the northern border, there would be signs. Katie might go ahead and I think that's where you got one more. Yep. These are some sample signs that are used around some of Hartsville Town properties as well as one in Brunswick. So something along this lines would be placed along the borders. both the northern, mainly the northern, and probably a few on the southern boundaries as well. Yeah. This is, here again, this is just a draft, but these are some of the rules that would be sort of consistent with other rules at town properties. So this would be just more or less, if you want an idea of what would be posted at the start of the trail. I guess I should add, this property has been and presumably will be, regardless of what happens in March, listed on the Main Islands Trail Association, and it's accessible by water. And so that would be signs on the water access would also be posted for anyone who drives by boat.
And it's already on the Main Island Trail.
Yeah. It has been for many years. And just want to sort of point out why it's advantageous for the town to enter in to management agreement. Most notably up there, and this fits with the town's comprehensive plan. It matches was just approved recently by the voters, but it's also what's in the previous comprehensive plan, and that's pretty much to promote and provide water access both for recreational and potentially commercial uses. Also, under a management plan, the town would be able to control. It could quickly change rules, it could put up additional signage, whatever might be needed in response to any issues. Basically, it ultimately just adds another nice quiet path down to the water. This will never be another Mitchell Field or Cliff Trail, but like many trails around town, I think maybe Witching Cove or the Hope Graves Property Course Island would be a place for a few people at a time to gain access to a very attractive beach and pretty open field overlooking Orpsville Sound. I guess one other thing to mention is that, like pretty much all of the town properties with trails, it's maintained by volunteers. So there's very minimal expense there. Even the block bridge we use has been donated. So the biggest expense the town would probably be looking at would be signage. I hope anything else.
Christie informed us that there is money in the budget for next year that would cover that, right?
So, Christie Aon, the town administrator. In the proposed 2026 budget, we have allocated or proposed to allocate $5,000 for Clark Cove, specifically for, signage, the potential to use that as leverage to get grant money, so it would be a match potentially. It would have to be approved by the voters. It would be part of the article that would be presented. In addition, the town budget proposes to have a year-round part-time monitor for all of our town lands. So this was going to happen anyway, because we have a lot to take care of and we want to do a good job doing that. And we believe that it's time, given that Mitchell Field is going to have a lot of activity. The volunteer steward at Mitchell Field is going to be stepping down next year. So we need to really realize that we have some obligations to monitor these properties, and that person would be responsible for monitoring Clark Cove should the voters approve the town taking on the management.
Now we begin the public participation part. And I just want to remind you, please state your name, to keep the focus on the plan, the merits of it. You can advocate for it or against it, but keep it civil, please. First, any comments at all? Anyone want to speak? Any feedback? Do you like the plan? Do you not like it? Think it's a good plan? Can it be improved? Please.
concerns me is people, because we've had people come down to our dock, sit on our dock, and our people wanted to use their boat, and they come to the dock and these people didn't even move. Where did you come from? Oh, we got permission from someone. And the person they got permission from is deceased. Okay? We've had people who moved in from out of state. They came over and said hi to us, and then they wanted to go down North Shore. And I said, well, it's private road, it's for residents only, there's a sign there. 10 minutes later, I saw these people walking down that road. We had people parked up, I think, near the museum. Same thing, they come down North Shore Road. You know, you can put signage and that's great, but I'm just concerned about people coming in onto our land, using our docks. Jim was talking about people who have, I think it's the Chipman family, who have a property where they have some seatage there, and people who don't belong there came and sat in their chairs and were upset when they were asked to leave. That's the kind of stuff that I'm really concerned about. And I don't know what type of studies I've heard from different people about bird nesting and so on. I'd like to know what has been done about that. Have there been studies about that? Does anybody have any ideas?
There have been no official studies, because this is not as yet a state project where they would turn the switch and start doing all that kind of work. But anecdotally or informally, the IFW staff have been coming to this site, I think once a year at least for the last 5 or 6 years. They note habitat and bird activity and things of that nature in their own internal reports. And I think there was mention of it in a letter from IFW to the state about what they had observed informally on the site. So yes, it has been looked at, but only informally, because again, we're in the do you think this would be a good idea phase, or will this work phase? That's why such an actual study has not been done.
David Eichen, I'm one of the selectmen, and my great interest in this is because this was my great-great-grandfather's farm. It was Emor Allen, who was the guy that Allen Point is named for. I grew up there. I spent a lot of time playing in that field and along the shore. I have a great deal of interest in what happens to it, obviously. And all the folks here who live on Allen Point Road or in that vicinity who have spoken in the last couple of public meetings that we've had, I think that generally speaking, the people on the Allen Point Road are not opposed to folks visiting the site. In fact, folks do visit it. But when the proposal showed a parking lot with signs and advertising, and it really freaked everybody out. This is not what should happen to the Allen Point Road. It's a quiet neighborhood, very little traffic on that road. A lot of people walk on it with their kids and their dogs. We don't need to put extra traffic there. I think a minimized plan that has a small area for people to just pull off the road, maybe some improvements to the trail, but very minimal signs, and no signs out on the main road directing people in there, and please don't advertise it. Places like this are, the best part is the adventure, discovering it and finding it. Signs pointing to it sort of take the fun out of it. And I don't think anyone is interested in preventing people from coming there, other than, as you've said, we've had experiences with people using private property adjacent to this, and they seem quite upset when they're told that it's not part of the state property. And there's a stone wall on one side, so it's delineated, but on the other side there is nothing. It's just the field goes right back into people's back lawns. So you've got to be very careful. And so, but I would suggest minimum signage, don't direct people in there. No kiosk, please, and no advertising. And I think this would work out great for everybody involved.
My name's Mark Scantus. I live off of Pond Road, off of Allen Point Road. And you have to forgive me, I haven't been to prior meetings concerning this, so this is the first time I've seen this tonight. Couple thoughts. Sorry. Couple questions and a couple thoughts. So I saw the parking for 3 or 4 vehicles. So what's going to happen when 5 and 6 vehicles show up and they start parking along Allen Point Road if that little parking lot is full? So that's definitely a concern because that happens a lot of places and you see cars lined up. And I think other people have probably spoken before, but it's a high traffic area. I think it works well the way it is now. There's a lot of people that do walk down that road and get permission from landowners who go down to the water. And I think like Dave says, if you're advertising it, you're just going to have that more people. It's going to be more complicated. You're going to have more issues. So I think when we do these things, we have to look at also how would we feel if that was in our backyard. It's always easy to make a decision when it's somebody else's backyard, but when it's our own, we need to really analyze that and see if that's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Hi, Patty Lockram, Elm Point Road. So just a question on the process about when formal things would happen, formal studies. Is that before it goes and is presented to the voters of Harpswell? Or when does that happen? So when does this become, instead of informal, more formal? Can anyone answer that?
Christy, can you answer that?
I will attempt to. Every time issues were raised at a select board meeting, and often they were from people in the neighborhood, and I totally understand why they would raise these issues, we would reach out to state agencies. As a staff person, I was asked to reach out to the state on a number of issues related to the use of Clark Cove and how it might impact wildlife, bird life, wetlands, and I provided all of those documents to some of the members of the neighborhood and hoped that they shared them with one another. They were provided to the committee. In all respects, the state gave some suggestions for how to manage certain areas. For instance, they said, don't mow the meadows at certain times of year because that's going to be a problem for the bobolinks. That's a similar issue we have at Mitchell Field. There were some other recommendations about what we should do and the timing. For instance, dogs not being allowed on the beach from a certain period of time. So I don't know if you call that formal or informal, but the town had direct contacts with state agencies or with a particular point person who then reached out to state agencies, and we have various letters in the file regarding those issues that have been shared with some people, and we can post them on our website too.
What about the wetlands? That's never been addressed.
So I looked that up because I was expecting that question, and in one of the letters it said that they don't see anything that warrants it would need to be evaluated. It doesn't meet sort of the threshold level. Let me see. It says,
I believe they said looking at the whole map indicated it wasn't wet.
it said, I have this letter dated October 25th, 2024 from the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry. It says, given that public comments focused in part on concerns about the project's effects on wetlands, I want to highlight that IF&W confirms the absence of mapped freshwater wetlands. And this was from Jim Vogel. So whether or not that will be updated, I don't know. I don't have an answer, but that was the communication in October of 2024.
And that refers up here to where it says on bridge.
People can't hear you, Jim.
seems that the state is reluctant to address the issue of wetlands because wetlands are highly protected. Saying we see no map that shows that wetland, when those maps were probably done 20 years ago. If you go out there right now, you'll be up to your knees in water, and you will year round. Now, maybe 20 years ago that wasn't the case, but it is today. Look at your own work, trail work. We've got everything, bog bridging. Well, you don't do bog bridging if you don't have wetlands. That's specifically what it's for. So let's keep that in mind. Secondly, another thing the state did say, thank you for forwarding that, is that it is protected habitat along the shoreline. It's protected habitat for shore and wading birds, and that's specifically mentioned by the state. So now you want a trail that's going to dump everyone right in that point. Another issue. Your trail used to go, all you've done is cut the trail a little bit. The trail used to go to someone's backyard, for those folks, and drop everyone right there and right at the point of someone's property, where you can look over and see a road you can walk on, which is a private road. Now what you've done is you've moved it to the other side of the property so that it can go on this gentleman's property. Because if you dump people out there, they're going to walk one way or the other. They want to see, you know, if that's what it's about, they're going to stumble over the rocks. Incidentally, this concept of the beach, you really need to be disabused of that. There's not a beach there. It's a rocky shoreline, and there may be some gravelly sand at low tide. Now, you can show all the pictures. We saw all the pictures, and they're highly deceptive. Just walk down there. Ask anyone who lives there, is that a sandy beach? Would you lay there on Sunday? No, it's a rocky shoreline. It's not a sandy beach. So we've got a lot of things here that don't seem to really be taken into account that should be before we move forward on anything.
I'd like to step in here for a minute and say that the issues you raise are valid, Jim, and they're the kinds of things that are looked at. But at this point, we have not made a formal, the select board have not made a formal request
Okay, see, that's
to
the
this.
process problem that Patty was discussing.
In order,
No, listen, you're asking for approval from the
Can you go to the
voters.
mic so we can hear you?
You're asking for approval of the boards, but you haven't given all of the details of what would be included, so it's putting the cart before the horse, is that what you're suggesting?
yes, it doesn't go to vote.
Well, the point is, you don't enter into a deal saying, oh, well, we'll figure out the details later. We'll see how legal or illegal this is. We'll see how many restrictions there are or might not be. We'll do traffic studies later. We'll do an environmental assessment after you've agreed to the whole thing. You do that as part of the process. You do that as part of your presentation package. You should be coming to us with that today. Not saying, oh, well, after the voters approve, if they do, then we'll do it. You're putting the cart before the horse. I'm sorry.
That is not what's being proposed, Jim. The point is that first you put out some feelers to see whether something is appropriate, whether the state is willing to enter into it. Let me finish, please. That the state is willing to do this. If technically speaking, the town has not said to the Department of Conservation, given this initial information we have, is the state willing to enter into a management agreement with us and begin steps at looking at what that management agreement would be, which lands would it entail, what research should we do on the site before we finalize any agreement that we will co-manage this property. I think that's some confusion about it. It's not that anyone is ignoring the condition of this property or some of its conditions. It's that the state of Maine is the owner of this land. To go and do studies on it, any kind of research, we need approval from that landowner, and that landowner is the state of Maine. So we end up doing piecemeal, looking into some stuff and asking agencies for some input. IFW has given some input. DOC has not as yet done any significant input. And we know that this proposal, compared to, they're doing projects all over the state of Maine with limited staff and limited money, and they only have so many hours in the day. So we've been lucky to be able to get some feedback from them informally, but nothing official or substantive can be researched or looked at until the town, the select board says, we're interested in doing this with you. Are you interested in doing this with us? Then it moves forward to try to fine tune the research and the analysis of the site. Then a draft agreement is drawn up based upon that site and the proposed use. And until that time, and when the select board said this is reasonable to us, then it gets presented to town meeting. Is the town interested in entering into an agreement with the state of Maine to manage this particular piece of property for public access to the waters of Maine? And it doesn't even necessarily mean that every inch of all that you see up on that screen is included in the management plan. It could be only a portion of the property. But all this is the kind of thing that we've got somehow turned around as a group, and people are worried that we're hiding something or that we're not doing the proper research. But first we have to have some kind of understanding initially, informally with the state, yes, they want to do this with us. And the initial verbal discussions have been, yes, we are interested. It will be the voters who vote on that final management plan.
Hi, I'm Hank Thorburn, I live on Allen Point Road. And it seems like initially it's an informal meeting, which is great. I like what you've actually done. A simple path, a simple parking lot, and a set of stairs going down to the water. It's public land. Everyone deserves to have a right to go to it and not kill themselves walking through cricket bushes. However, I think everyone's bringing up really good points about private property and so on. I think you've done a really good job, actually. What I see here makes sense. And it is a beautiful beach. You guys can talk about how bad it is and everything else. It's not. It's beautiful. And, you know, nobody should really lie about that. It's really a nice place, and I think people deserve to go there as long as it's a simple plan, well thought out, and managed like some of the other town properties, which I think are good. It's kind of low key, and that's sort of what we need. And I've lived there for a long time. My family's had a house there. It absolutely affects us. And those are my feelings. Thank you.
My name is Tracy Johnson Colby, and I live on Merriman Cove. And I appreciate all the work. I know there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and it is public land. However, I want to make known that I am against this project. If it's going to go forward, I would like to see it downsized, downscaled, and compromised. But overall, when I look at Allen Point Road, because that's my major walking area with my dog, and the traffic that's increased on Allen Point Road since I've lived there for 34 years is just, it's unimaginable to me. I don't know where these people are going, or because you can only go so far down the other end of Clark Cove. I don't know where all these people are coming from, but it's become dangerous actually to walk there. Hope you know how dangerous your road has become with all the traffic on the for the Dolphin. Nobody walks their dogs on that road in the summer anymore, period. You just can't. I don't like feeling like my home and area has been encroached upon to the point where I am afraid to walk on Allen Point Road. And that is happening more and more. obviously, the older I get, the more vulnerable I would be walking on any public road. But the traffic has increased, this will increase the traffic, no matter what anyone says, oh, it's 2 or 3 cars, but then it's 5 or 6, and then the thing that I'm trying to get a 40,000 view look at is that so many of the trails that we already have are a little bit hidden. Like you kind of drive down a road or you get to some trees and you can't really see the parking from the road, and it's kind of intimate. But Allen Point Road, from a 40,000 view, is open. It's open. You can see everything. You're gonna see all the cars. Everyone's gonna be able to see the people walking down there. All the folks who live on that shore are gonna see people. It's not a private little access to the water like so many of our other accesses are. So that's one of my concerns. My other main concern, besides financial, I think Harpswell is going off the rails. I don't know where people are getting all their money, and I don't know why they want to spend it all on all the projects they want to spend it all. But the voting in this town has changed like I can't even believe it. They just want to spend money like it's hemorrhaging. My question is, are we voting on this year's town meeting, or is it going to be next year's town meeting?
The proposal, it would be this next March or whenever our spring town meeting is.
But it doesn't seem to me like you're prepared to present this to the full town by March. I mean, as far as your plan goes, first it's 2 or 3 parking spaces, then it's 5 or 6. Are these paved spaces? Because it's my understanding that if you have paved parking in Harpswell, you've got to have painted lines for the spaces, because I know that for a fact, because they did that to the Morse's food truck on Lookout Point. They couldn't have picnic tables down there because they were forced to have marked parking spots. So is this paved parking? Is it gravel parking? Is it grass parking? Is it mud parking? You know, where are you going to put these cars?
What we're going to be asking the voters in March is if they want to enter into a management agreement with the state. That would be the first step, like others have alluded to here. If the voters then approve us entering into that management agreement with the state, that's when we would start finalizing the trail plan, the parking plan, and the stuff like that. But first we need to hear from the townspeople if they even want to enter into this management agreement with the state. So that would be the first step. That would be when the formal things would start happening, you know.
So it's not details for March, like,
right,
it's not like the nitty gritty.
Exactly. It's, do you want us as the board to enter into this management agreement with the state and take over managing this property? And then that's when we would start finalizing these trail plans, the parking plans, and the stuff like that. And I'll speak for myself. The reason I pushed it to the voters is I believe, like they've said before, if we enter into this management plan, we have far more control over it as a town than if we leave it in the state's hands. If it's left in the state's hands, they can come in and make it a mere point boat launch, and there's absolutely nothing we can do as a board, as a town, or anything to stop it. But if we control the management plan, we can manage it how we see fit. So that, in my mind, is the benefit to entering into a management agreement. And then, once the voters approve that, that's when the town lands committee and everybody will work on finalizing the trail details and everything like that.
Okay, so that actually sounds like a reasonable thing to do, is to get management on the land. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do anything with the land. We can, as a town, have the control to manage this land and decide to not do anything. Leave it just the way it is, with a little signs and mow a swath there and have it be done. I mean, why do we have to go forward with more you know, with more not building, but more development of this land. And, you know, finally, I'd like to say, when is enough enough? Like, when do you stop building and making new things? Like, when?
Well, I mean, there's people being born every day, so as long as there's
Well,
people coming, stuff's gonna keep being built.
We could use a few more people being born, quite frankly. But I'm saying, you know, when is enough enough? You know, I like the idea of the town managing this land. From what you just told me, Matt, I understand better the reason behind wanting to grab management of this land. I understand that. But I also want to make sure that I'm heard, that I am against any kind of development on that land.
And I can understand that, certainly, and I don't think you're alone in that, you know.
No, but I just want to make sure I'm heard.
And I think that step comes after we enter into that management agreement, you know, that's when you really want to make your voice heard to the town lands committee and whoever is going to be charged with developing or managing that property. You know, that's when you really want to say, I don't want to see it developed, just leave it the way it is. And that will have to be decided on later down the road, you know, if we enter into that management plan. Certainly.
I hear what you're saying about not wanting more things developed in town and to keeping it simple. I think my objective is the same as yours. I'm not looking for a big, wide trail system with big signs on the road that's directing everyone from all over, everywhere to come down there. Happy to not advertise it. That sounds great. The signs that I'm thinking of are only to indicate where the private property is. Are people going to ignore them? Absolutely, they already do. It's already an issue. What I would love is a simple mowed path wherever anybody can tell me that lives in the neighborhood is the best place to put the mowed path.
That's a good start.
To get down to the water in the least obtrusive way, so staying away from the private road, just a space where I can walk down. It could be those rock stairs that already exist, not looking for a highway, gravel path, or anything like that.
I understand what you're saying, and that's the way Stover's used to be. And now, I cannot go to Stover's in the summer.
Same.
I have a four-wheel drive. I can get over the rock ledge. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about all the idiots who are taking up all the space on Stover's where I can't even enjoy the beach anymore. Stover's is a train wreck, and they're not from Harpswell. They're coming from all different towns, We used to be able to have bonfires on that beach and hang out, and it was natural. And it was real. Now it's just another frickin' Disneyland. And I don't want to see that happening on my Allen Point Road.
Agreed. I also no longer go to Stover's, and the kids in Harpswell love the rocky beaches. We don't require sand.
So about the management agreement and what would be presented at the March meeting. So you would be asking the town to go ahead. Would the management agreement be updated and shown to the voters prior to their votes? Or just to go ahead and create one? Like, do the voters actually know what's in the management agreement prior to saying, yeah, go ahead?
My guess is you would have a pretty good idea of what that is because we've been having all these meetings. You've seen what we produced. Let me finish, please. And the select board enters into contracts with various private parties, and at town meeting, these contracts are approved, but that doesn't mean we are reading every paragraph of that contract that's being negotiated between the select board and these developers. The select board goes to town meeting and says, will you authorize us to enter into this contract? Whatever it was, it could have been anything that the town enters into that's a longer term agreement. And the entire document is not presented at that town meeting. With an understanding of what's going to be proposed and done, that's what's voted on, and that's what would happen here. You've seen what we presented to you.
I have, and I've also seen the draft agreement.
Please forget the draft agreement. Someone asked to see what a state management plan agreement looks like, and the state sent one with no real time spent on it because they knew we were still in the unknown phase of whether we were going to do something. The final plan will be something that looks a lot more like this.
Again, my question to Matt, please.
I see it being a two-step process, kind of. The first step would be to vote in the spring here in March for us to enter into the management agreement. We would get something, hopefully we would have something in writing then that would kind of outline the management agreement. We don't have to have trails and stuff like that for a management agreement. Then there would be a second vote, later on, if we entered into the management agreement, to develop it, or whatever word you want to use for a trail system and parking and stuff like that.
So that's my question, that there would be a second vote to the voters?
There would have to be, because there's going to be expenses.
Okay, wonderful, that's exactly what I was wanting to know, thank you.
It would depend on what expenses. If the expenses were over 5,000, right, Christie?
It's a long-term commitment that we worry about.
So my sense is that there's a couple of ways to approach this. One is you could have a draft management agreement prepared for the voters to see and to discuss, and it would be something that they would authorize you to sign. And it might have information in there about the trail. It might talk about conservation. It might have some detail in it. If you are authorized to sign that draft agreement, I don't believe you would have to come back. The two-step approach, I guess you want authority to negotiate a management agreement, and then you want to bring that back to the town meeting as a two-step process. I don't know if that's what you're thinking about. So I would, as a voter, want to see the draft management agreement, perhaps before I knew what I was authorizing. And so I thought that's where we were going, but...
I thought we would have the draft management agreement, but I didn't necessarily think the trail system and everything like that would be finalized until we entered into a management agreement.
Well, I do want to say we have a draft agreement. The town has not agreed to it. It is written as if it were for Clark Cove. It's sort of a standard template that the state uses, but they were specific. They referenced a plan that the Town Lands Committee had put forth. So we have had communications with the state about what a draft management plan would look like, and we have provided that to people. I think it was on a select board agenda, in fact, but that may have been before you were on the board. No, the last one. Oh, okay. So
that was the one that we were going to try to get updated. That what was the word they used? Endeavor.
Yeah. But we got that management agreement for the Harpswell Clark Cove property in March of 2025, but it was after we had a town meeting, so there was no way to have any discussion about that. But I think if I were a voter, I would want to know what I might be authorizing the select board to sign.
Yeah, I would like to have the agreement in hand, but I think the trail system could still be worked out after we entered into a management agreement.
Well, we need to see that agreement.
I agree.
Okay, my name's Karen Nazer. I'm a second generation Harpswell person, however, only on Allen Point since a year and a half. Used to live on the other side when you couldn't get here before the bridge. And some of my friends still look at me stink-eyed because I moved over here. Okay, living on Allen Point Road, I live in what was the original Morse house. So I have access to that little easement easement down there because 100 boats were built in my boathouse. And I'm sorry if I used Sheldon's permission, that might have been like me when I went swimming on that side, but, because he said, ask Barbara, but you have my permission, and I didn't know, so full pause on me being new to this strip here. In terms of here, I'm all about public access. It's already public land. I have a swim group that we swim all over the place. We have purposely tried to only swim where we have access on the Morse or Miriam Cove side because we have not wanted to build the visibility of it. In fact, when the Anchor did a piece on us last year, it was iced in all the places we usually go, and I went down to the Cove and it wasn't iced in, but I thought, I don't think we want to do this. We're not going to come down here and have this be the big poster place of where we go swimming, because I knew that already people would walk down there because yes, it is marked on the main kayak trail map. It's marked right at Barbara's house for where you're supposed to land on that map, which is not a part of the public property. Well, it is technically, but from where you can step on the beach, and if it is high tide, you're inclined to go up that little easement up to Barbara's house. So there's a whole lot of marked and public things that humans being humans, it's a full moon tide or king tide or whatever, people aren't gonna stay on the beach. They're gonna go up. At low tide, me being me, who swims year round and loves being on the water and loves, where I live, you can't see the Cribstone or you can't see Halfway Rock. But if I walk down to go swimming at Miriam, I can. Most people walking down there are gonna want to see Halfway Rock, or, they're gonna wanna get all the way over for the beautiful view. It's not gonna end at that trail. They're gonna go over to where it's gorgeous, because you can't see past the windows right there. You're gonna go east to see all the way out. That's the human nature. I also know, because Josh and Emily warned me, my nickname is Bob. They said, Bob, don't go down the public way because there's a ravine. You've got osteoporosis, you're gonna break your freaking ankle. They said that log thing, the bridge there, it's not always great. If there's ice on it, whatever, because they know I go year round. So the wetland thing is a very real thing. The passing by, yes, if you clear it all up, but then we get into the management thing. You're talking about the state management preamble of engaging with them to discern all this. Then you're talking about the local volunteer management of it. And then you keep sort of saying we have some monies in account, we may or may not get them matched. We rely on volunteers, but increasingly we're having fewer aging out volunteers, especially in terrain that's kind of wonky. So I think it's a multi-part thing, and to vote on it as one lump thing, I think stages or where monies or committed volunteer time, or if you have a committed person who's coming around to all the places once Don retires, that might work, but that's an awful lot of land to cover. Harpswell's got, those 3 points. It's a lot of land to cover, especially if people discover this beach, which, and people from away will, because on Allen Point Road, the other thing nobody's mentioned is there are tons of Airbnbs. And that's part of the road traffic thing that Tracy's talking about. My parents are 88 and 87, they're living in Sheldon's own house, and we've been very fortunate when my dad's gone out and he's been mowing the edge there, and tractor tripped over, and people stop and help him, but there's more and more people all the time coming in, and we don't know everybody, and most people are friendly, but it just could add to a lot of craziness. So I'm for the public idea, but keeping people away from that private property and thinking they're just going to stay at the end of that trail, when you're showing the map goes all the way out to the end, people are going to walk out there and they're going to stumble up onto that, what looks like an inviting place with the chairs, especially if the tide comes in and they're not paying attention because they don't know because they're Highlanders. That's my 2 bits.
Catherine Gilly. I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for the work that you guys have put in. Catherine Gilly. No worries. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for the time and the work that you got put into this. I do like that the trail system has been cut back, you know, to prevent people from going all the way to the end and things of that sort. So that certainly makes sense, and I appreciate you kind of listening to a lot of the feedback that came through with that. Matt, I really enjoyed hearing it, you confirm or say, you know, it's kind of, in my eye, I agree with your statement of it being a better idea for the town to be in a joint management opportunity with this land rather than simply just letting the state manage it. In my head, I just keep hearing the keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. I don't think that the state is necessarily an enemy, but I also think that if they came through and blasted a road down through it and provided a major parking area for it, which they can do as the owner of it, if we didn't have any say in it, I would really be upset with that. But so I certainly agree with having some say in that is a lot better than having no say in that. So I really enjoyed that. As far as the speed limit and the speed issues that we see and things of that sort, is there an ability for us to request more policing from the sheriffs during the summer months or something of that sort? Or even, like I think somebody had mentioned, there's a lot of Airbnbs, to maybe have those Airbnb owners to mention something to their people. I know I've used Airbnbs in my travels many times, and there are typically, you know, things stated in the agreement and things of that sort. Especially being a small town, a small area, maybe they can help with controlling some of that by stating, you know, in their agreements, please be conscious of these areas. These roads are small, they're narrow, people walk them and things of that sort. So it might be something where we can get help from the homeowners or the Airbnb owners in that aspect. And then maybe we can also, within that management plan, just get something to confirm or more firmly state that we are not going to be advertising this public area, things of that sort. It being the state's land that was purchased with bond money for the purpose of conservation and public access, I do think that some sort of public access is absolutely needed there. And, you know, if not, then what are we doing with that? It needs to have some sort of function to it. So that's just my thought on it, but thank you for your time.
I know you're all happy to see me up here again. Try to make it quick. I wanted to address one thing, Matt, that you said. And I understand where you're coming from, saying, gee, I'd rather we control it, the state control it. I think you're maybe not looking at that as I am, which is this, that the state has done nothing with this property for 55 years. The state generally is not doing a lot of development of any kind. They have told us, at the last select board meeting, you asked this question and it was asked by other people, what will happen to the property if we do not enter into an agreement? And the response was nothing. It'll just continue on as it has been, with the caveat that who knows what the future may bring. Something could change in the future. Well, I think it's fairly unlikely that anything is going to change drastically in the future, at least in the near future. The state doesn't have excess monies to be throwing into all these projects.
There's 3 times more money than they've ever had in that fund, and they said that.
Well, okay.
Couldn't hear you.
What's that?
Say it again.
The state made it clear that they have 3 times more funding in their fund to develop state lands than they've ever had in past years.
And who said that, and when did they say it?
They said it at that last board meeting.
That's because they're taxing us to death.
Well, that's.
That's something to talk to the state
That's the
about.
same, those are the same people who said we have no plans to do anything.
At this time, but we have an administration change coming next year, and they have 3 times more money to develop state lands like that than they've ever had.
Well, okay, I think that you're making one mistake, and that is if we take control of this, you've opened Pandora's box. There's no going back. Once you start putting parking lots and trails in, then down the road, the next select board or the next property lands committee is going to say, gee, this is great. Let's add a bench. Let's put another trail over here. Why can't we have trash cans? Maybe a porta potty would be great. I mean, it doesn't stop. You know, you say, oh, well, let's just get control. Well, once you get control, once people then say, oh, well, I want this and I want that. And I think that the safer way to go is just leave it as it is. Anyone can go down there right now. It's open property. Anyone can go down there. There's no restrictions right now. It's freer than it's ever going to be. If the town takes it over, it's not going to have that freedom. It's actually going to reduce people's freedom. You're going to be putting in leash laws and times and seasons, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be more restrictive. I think if you just let this land sit, the state is probably going to go to sleep like they have been for 55 years. And you know what? If in a number of years they come back with some aggressive proposal, then we can deal with that then. You know, they still have requirements for development as well. And the state guys at that meeting also said they had a number of small properties. I don't remember if he said 18 or 24 or something scattered around the state.